Hi, and welcome to our inaugural video podcast of Double Shot of Tea, where we're happy to welcome you in this new medium and into our lives in another way here in our apartment. And we've had two, match weeks in the past, real life week to go over. So we're going to try to cram, as much as we can into as reasonable amount of time as we can. Um, but I'm just excited to bring this news to everybody on a new platform.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome to the video podcast of Double Shot of Tea, and good to welcome you with a double game week here. So we're going to give you the double coverage here on Double Shot of Tea.
Yeah, and I think the two games that happened in the last game weeks that were really the most interesting, just from a table standpoint, were probably the Manchester Derby, right, and the Liverpool Tottenham match. The Manchester Derby obviously wasn't very exciting. 0-0 draw. We saw a lot of the same things that we've been seeing from this United team, that they're tough to break down. And similarly, on City's side, we saw them creating a lot of chances and not necessarily having kind of that cutting edge. They're, maybe missing Aguero there. But I think the more interesting game, and the game that I want to touch on first, is this Liverpool Tottenham game that just happened. Tottenham obviously red hot right now, white hot, if you will. Liverpool kind of in the public eye having a little bit of trouble with their form and losing players, and kind of having that same effect, coming off of a draw at Fulham. They couldn't get all 3 points against Brighton. They came into this game against Tottenham with some fans back in the Cop. Um, and it was just kind of like it was going to predict a little bit the trajectory of Tottenham more than Liverpool, but I think it was just as important to Liverpool to kind of solidify that they're still, the top dog in this game, and I think they did just that.
Yeah, definitely a huge win for Liverpool coming in the late stages of the game with the Firmino header. It was really heartbreaking for Spurs, given that they honestly deserved something from that game. I think it was a good goal from Son. When we saw it, we were both, pretty convinced that the first goal was offside.
It
And
seemed it seemed offside, but I mean, I know we both kind of are on the same side of that, where we've said before we feel like it should probably go to the offensive
yeah,
player
absolutely.
anyway. There's a couple of things they could do to make the rule itself maybe a little bit more digestible for us, and give the attacker and the defender a little bit more leeway, and just kind of make that margin of error a little bit smaller. But I mean, the computer draws a fucking line. So if he, I mean, he was onside out, and he does what he always does, right? He's ice cold, finishes near side of the keeper, of Alisson, after kind of doing a little bit of a body fake to the right. And he just won the Puskas, first South Korean to be nominated as well as win it. Even as an Arsenal fan, I mean, he's kind of hard to dislike, right? He's a super modest. He said recently that he doesn't see himself as kind of like that world class level of player, and he's okay with that. You see his work rate and his ability to finish. Um, and I mean, just how prolific he's been this season. He's been probably the best player in the EPL so far. And I think it was no surprise that he got on the score sheet against Liverpool there. Just
Yeah, and,
it,
and with one shot also, and we've
typical, right, at this
seen
point.
this so typical of Son, and he's been so good at just converting his one chance that he gets in the game, and it's just phenomenal that he's able to create such brilliance with just one or two chances, and just perfectly fits into the system that Mourinho's playing, where everybody's getting behind the ball and everybody's defending. Harry Kane is getting back and defending on set pieces really well. So and given that that's the tactic and that's the plan, I think Spurs did have a good amount of chances in the game, particularly Steven Bergwijn. Two of his chances, one was off the post, and the first one he scuffed, and they were pretty identical chances where he had the ball on his right foot coming in from kind of an angle from the left side, and he just he missed it, and you would expect him to score that. You would expect if Son were on that, he would probably score that. So that was really disappointing because the limited chances that Spurs had, that they do have in this game, we saw more. So it was encouraging for Spurs fans, but unfortunate that he wasn't able to capitalize.
Yeah, I thought Spurs were actually really potent, and I'm pulling up here just the expected goals timing chart. And you can see with Tottenham, which is so typical of the style of play, right? They aren't having that many opportunities, right? They go 30 minutes pretty much until the Sun goal. They don't have any shots worth anything, right? They're not creating anything for 30 minutes. Liverpool have already scored a goal, but are kind of plugging away with these solid but not amazing chances, right? And they're so clinical and they're so efficient. They have so much quality throughout the team that that's exactly how you would want them to play, right? And Tottenham have two ferociously efficient strikers in Kane and Son, and you see these chances that they're getting as the game goes on, these very steep spikes where they're having one shot that is like, taking them to point 0.4 expected goals, right? That Sun chance was so good. He was so clean through. We're used to him scoring on his first chance, but that's because that first chance is usually such a good chance. Um, and I mean, there's been a lot of complaints, right, about Tottenham's expected goals. Over the past 3 games, they've actually overperformed their expected goals to get results, excluding that Crystal Palace game, obviously, where it came back to bite them. And we talked a little bit before that game saying, that it against teams that do sit back, they have a little bit of an issue breaking them down. But against a team like Liverpool, Jose Mourinho has this team so wired. Look, every 15 minutes, they're getting a huge chance. That's not.
Right, and it's atypical of what Spurs have been showing recently. Like against the Chelsea game, if we look at it, Spurs were completely shell the whole game, and this was way more encouraging for Mourinho's side, getting what a bunch more chances against a Liverpool team. But that's also kind of expected because given that Liverpool don't have their best center back, they're rotating their defense a bit with the younger player coming in. So you know, with that Liverpool attack, it's just they're gonna get forward, they're gonna become open at some point. So that kind of played into Spurs' hand, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, and they definitely could have gotten something out of here. I think it was unfortunate. I think we definitely have to talk about the the late header goal off the corner for Firmino, which we looked back and we were so confused. We were looking at what happened, um, and just really, really crazy play where
I mean,
Henderson.
I think really what happened, right, is we were watching it back and I was being kind of critical of Dyer, who I like to bring up
Right.
all the
Well,
time,
yeah,
because
I
almost
think we
every
both.
Tottenham goal while you guys were in a bad period and also at the beginning of this season was almost directly Eric Dyer's fault, where somewhere in the play we kind of had like a running joke, somewhere in the play he fucked up. Um, and in this play you
Right.
see, right, Henderson and the young center back um, kind of setting up, and Dyer's defending against the young Liverpool center back, and Henderson just kind of body checks him and he falls down. But at first, what it looks like when you see it from the first angle of the corner is that Dyer is on the wrong side of Henderson and just like falls
Yeah.
over
So it looks
and
like he
like
just
dives
falls
when he
over.
realizes he's on the wrong side. Yeah.
But yeah, no, he doesn't fall over. Jordan Henderson kind of gives him a little body check, and unfortunately, the referee doesn't see this. I think if
I don't know if it
yeah,
had too much to do with anything. What I would say is it doesn't make sense to me that Dyer, right, probably Tottenham's best aerial presence. I mean, he doesn't make a lot of great decisions, but he has a huge body and he's aggressive and he tries to get to the ball. It doesn't make sense to me. Why is he at the edge of the box defending this young Liverpool center back? He should be in the middle, either attacking the ball or on somebody like Roberto Firmino or, like a real danger. So to me, that made like not a lot of sense. And I think he wasn't guarding Firmino, right? So I'm not sure that it made too much of a difference, but it was kind of like, you know, letter
uh,
of the law. I think it was probably a foul. So, in,
yeah, and unfortunate, but Liverpool they did have 11 shots on target that game. I and still underperformed Spurs expected goal. So I think that has to be said as well, that they kind of were just hitting shots, at will, whenever they could, which is obviously their tactic into Klopp's plan, but not the best, efficiency rating there in terms of
Yeah.
creating chances.
I mean, it's the complete opposite of Jose Mourinho's style, right? He wants to dominate in just having just like a plethora of offensive chances that are not necessarily the best, but he creates so many of these half chances in his team, and the quality of his forwards are so good, and the quality of the service in from Trent, from Robertson is going to be so quality. Like they're going to do just fine. Whereas you see, right, those steep, like all or nothing type, to bring up the doc, but the all or nothing type chances that Jose Mourinho creates for his team, um, sometimes that really wears on the team, right? Because as in the kind of that final stages of his career at Chelsea, at Real Madrid, some of the players go out of form or whatever, or are just tired out, and so they're not firing, and he doesn't create like a ton of chances, so it feels difficult. But when you have the buy-in, which he usually does around this stage, when he's managing, and you have the players that have that finishing quality, then it's just such a lethal style of play. That's why he had the highest scoring Real Madrid team in history. It's because he has this set up in a way that he frustrates the other team into pushing too far forward, and then he releases these quality players in one-on-one situations almost with the whole field to themselves. So like, for this stage, you have to say Tottenham have been really, really strong. And I wouldn't say watching that game or even looking at the statistics of that game that Jose Mourinho got it wrong. I mean, I think Liverpool are one of, probably the best team and definitely the favorites. And Tottenham went away to them. They didn't have Ndombele, which I think might have been a mistake. They didn't have Reguilon playing, which maybe that was a good choice. But I think if they had their starter in Ndombele kind of playing in that central midfield position and breaking the press a little bit better and getting Kane the ball, getting Son the ball a little bit more, we would have seen, instead of maybe 3-4 opportunities for Tottenham, 6-7 opportunities, and it could have been a different story, because I think that Liverpool defense was a little bit more susceptible if Tottenham were a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised not to see Ndombele in the starting lineup. Giovanni Lo Celso replaced him, and he did get that assist for Son's goal, which was, what he, came in
Yeah,
to do.
nothing
So,
against Giovanni Lo
yeah.
Celso at all. I'm not even saying he would necessarily be the one to go. I think probably he would, but I mean, he did really well, not
But
slacking
he
his
also he didn't
performance at
sub
all.
him on either. He brought in Lucas Moura for Lo Celso, when typically, it's the Ndombele for Lo Celso sub, and he didn't do that. So, but
Yeah,
yeah.
was that Isco, I think, at Real Madrid, talking about Zidane, who was like, every game, he subs me on in the 80th minute, but then when I play, he subs me off every game in the 55th minute. Like, literally every single game in Ndombele is subbed off for Lo Celso. I wouldn't be surprised if that has been 100% true.
And I do want to say that the only two Premier League games that Spurs have lost this season, Tanguy and Ndombele has not started.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a complete turnaround, I would say. You guys struggled again, and we can touch on this now too. The Crystal Palace game a little bit. I mean, we touched on it already, but because you're setting up the midfield in that way with Højbjerg, Sissoko, and Ndombele has been playing so well at sitting deep, beating a couple of players, giving you guys a little bit of time to start those runs, and then being able to find Højbjerg or whoever to get the ball forward, to move the ball forward. But basically, what he does is he receives the ball with his back to the goal, and he's able to attract players onto him. And then he's so good in those tight spaces, and he's so strong on the ball that he's able to get his pass off anyway. So the more players who are coming to press him, like the worse off it results for people. But without, you know, a creative player that's like a real number 10, and I think we've seen those players in a lot of Jose sides, um, like Ozil's, You have obviously Hazard is a very creative player, Oscar, et cetera, et cetera. Um, in this team, there's not like a genuine number 10 right now with Ericsson out of favor. Dele Ali isn't really that type of player anyway. Lo Celso seems like he's kind of like a deeper ball progressor, but I thought when he was coming over that he would be more that type of player. Um, but I think when Tottenham are playing these teams that set up deep, like Crystal Palace, who are really good at it, they're going to struggle because they don't have that player in the center of midfield who can find those passes further up the pitch, right? And Domblé is so good when you guys counter and he can break the press, but he's not necessarily going to find that needle in the haystack pass when you're in the final third, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you with the assessment with Crystal Palace. It was as if they kind of sat off with the 1-0 lead. And if we look at the expected goal, it's, you know, comparing it to what you showed before in the second half, it was nothing. We went 50 minutes without a shot on target. Guaita had a good game. He had some good saves, but going 50 minutes without a shot was pretty bad. After the goal, after getting scored on with Benteke, it's no response. So yeah,
Yeah, and Benteke has been in good form. He's had three
he has,
goals in his last three games, which is more than his like last 48 or something.
right?
But his stock is rising. He looks lean and mean and ready to be tough up there. And Crystal Palace, they definitely have had a bit of, you know, a change in fortune recently, right? They had that big win. Then they had the draw against Spurs. They had a draw also against West Ham after that. And West Ham have obviously been performing really well. So they're kind of turning it around a little bit as of late. But I think the next game that I definitely want to touch on is going to be, I mean, just Arsenal's last two games. Um, just because not that Arsenal is a very important team and who's going to win the race right now, but I think it's pretty important what's happening with them. Almost as important as who's going to win is how shambolic Arsenal have been, right? They've had three red cards now in the last five games. They've had seven red cards in the Premier League since Mikel Arteta has become the manager. No team's had more. Um, and so, right, the red card that we saw against Burnley, the Xhaka red card, was pretty terrible, right? I mean, I think the anger around the club at that point was pretty untenable. It was at the highest level that I've seen just because people were angry at Xhaka for making the same mistakes all the time. He's gotten a lot of red cards. He made a bad tackle in the first place, but then why are you choking a guy when we're coming off a red card at Leeds? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much going on, and there should have been such a strong message of like, nobody fuck up. We need to win these points. Burnley was in 19th. Like, this was a game where we could finally get something on the board. Xhaka made a bad tackle, and then he obviously chokes this guy, like, which is just, what are you gonna do about that? Um, and the blame also has to squarely lie right on Arteta's shoulders, who plays him in a position where he has to make these kind of tackles, right? Like this, first tackle he made was a yellow, and I think I'm giving him a little bit of a pass because like maybe after that yellow card he would have changed things up or substituted him out, and he was like, okay, you have one yellow, and then once you get that yellow, we have to kind of rearrange so that you're not the one who's defending on the break. Even though I don't think that's the change that would have come. Um, but at the same time, like, he chokes a guy. Like, what can Arteta really do about that? Like, Xhaka knows not to choke people. Like, you know what I
That's
mean?
ridiculous to do that. It's like
He
absolutely
used to be the
insane. And
captain.
yeah, he's had, this is not the first time Jacques has had, kind of like a meme moment at Arsenal.
No, I mean, he was right. He told the fans to fuck off.
Yeah, he's kind of always seemed like halfway in, halfway out. I don't know,
It doesn't
but
make sense to me when you have a player like that that's obviously got such a divide with the fans and is also not like performing well. Like, why not do everything to get rid of, like, Arteta was like, he bringing him back into the fold And I think that is a huge issue, right? He sent away Lucas Torreira. He sent away Gendouzi for getting one fucking red card, and then I guess not apologizing. But it's like, how many red cards have we had?
Yeah, I think the
Um,
Gendouzi send away was clearly not a good move. Like you guys totally could have used him this season
I
right
just
now.
think down the line, right, Arteta has just made so many man management errors. He sent away Gendouzi. He sent away Lucas Torreira. He kept El Neni and Xhaka, and he he didn't register Ozil. He didn't register Saliba. So you just have this situation where Arsenal needed to clear dead wood, and then they brought in an old manager who played with a bunch of these guys, and then didn't get rid of them. So, I mean, I think the news around the club with everybody, there's a lot of tension. A lot of people are angry at Adu, and obviously the results are so bad, the worst pretty much ever for Arsenal in a very long history. So
Yeah, it was tough for you guys. You were able to get 38 crosses against Burnley.
that's true.
Keeping
So
up with the amount of crosses that Arteta was talking about in his press conferences and trying to keep those numbers up. The numbers were still high despite the red card. Obviously, with Aubameyang and Lacazette in against a Burnley team with massive defenders that are able to defend crosses, it's not effective. And then
it
with
wasn't
Xhaka
effective. I
getting a
have to
red.
say there was at least two chances that I can remember just off the top of my head, which was like a Lacazette chance and a Saka chance, which were just cutbacks, like on the ground, where they hit the ball right at Pope. Right, they just like,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I feel like I know the expected goals wasn't that high, but if you look at everything that happened in the game, I think Arsenal have players who are out of form, right? So, I think a different informed Arsenal team might have scored and it wouldn't have been quite as bad. And usually once you go up 1-0, it kind of changes the game and like yada yada yada. It wasn't good. You can't have two CDMs on when you're 50 minutes in and it's drawn at home to Burnley. There were a lot of things that I took issue with, but I also do genuinely believe like we would have won that game if he hadn't have gotten that red card. So it's hard to be.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
it's tough to look at with
I
the
do
red.
blame him more almost for the Southampton game, right? Because we were watching the Southampton game, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna share my screen right now so we can take a little bit of a look at what transpired in that game, just over the course of time here. Because when we look at the timing chart, right, you could see we get our goal, right? So things are in the beginning, things are good. They have this chance, which I think woke our team up a little bit, right? Early on, they had that Theo Walcott goal, which for me was, I mean, you can see how flatline it goes after that for Southampton's chances. And so basically, that goal, what happened was El Neni tried to come in and slide tackle a pass before it got into Theo Walcott. Gabriel had come up and tried to nip the ball, like stand up Theo Walcott, and had come very far out. So we were basically just pressing very aggressively in the first 15 minutes, and the ball kind of bounced between Gabriel's legs and then out to Theo Walcott, or no, out to whoever, who then passed it to Theo Walcott. He was actually coming in to check on. I forget who got the assist on it, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I,
In
I,
the.
the main thing that I took from this game was that what you were talking about when we were watching it was how Gabriel was drawn every time, and when you're playing with Kieran or with Rob Holding, he was having like a really really tough time because he always had to come out and press, to apply some pressure to a guy getting the ball, and then kind of Rob Holding is just left out to dry a little bit.
It's
So
like
I don't,
it's. I think it's like an intentional tactic, right? So
yeah,
he's got Gabriel pushed up so high because I think Gabriel is genuinely the best ball winner and tackler, and he is aggressive and he does play on the front foot, and that's okay. I was okay with that. I think he got a little unlucky for the Theo Walcott goal, where it's obviously like it's a risk, right? We're at home. I think we should have a defender who's trying to play that high line, trying to get the ball in before people. We have Tierney and Rob Holding back. The ball gets played outside of Tierney. So it's not like this person ran right through the middle of the hole that Gabriel created, but obviously Tierney had to tuck in to cover. Walcott is so freaking fast. I mean, everybody knows that. That's just the truth of the matter. It worries me that you know what I mean? Like it was one pass and one mistake that took out two players. So there needs to be more communication there. Obviously, if El Neni is pressing this guy and then Gabriel is also pressing him, it was a little bit too much. The mistake was there. But the intentionality, I don't think is awful. But then again, we say Gabriel get a yellow card for coming up and pressing too tightly on somebody and then kicking the ball away. He gets a yellow card. Um, Obviously, Aubameyang scored a goal before this, and I don't. That's important, right? It was important for Aubameyang to get the ball rolling. Saka had a really good move where he weaves in between three players, kind of catches his balance. He's so good at that, and I think you remark on it honestly. Um, and I totally agree with you. He's just got such good balance, and he's always like about to fall over. And we
Mm-hmm.
saw it with Sterling's assist too. It's like these
Mm-hmm.
players who have that low center of gravity, where it's like obviously this other dude can't keep up with you if like you're falling over, like you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
And we
Um,
kind of see it with like Adama Traore too, and he beats people, and you
yeah,
know,
and Mane as well a little bit. It's like
and
their
maybe a little
bodies.
bit Dwight McNeil too, as the highest U21 player with dribbles, right? Or
Yeah, but he's so tall. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different, but like obviously it's not
Mm-hmm.
too different. But I mean, whatever the case, he did really well. He passed it across to Eddie Nketiah, who did a little in between. Both Saka and Aubameyang were coming in from that side, and it looked a little bit better from Arsenal, and you could tell that it was a good chance, and we had been creating a little bit more. Um, and then you can see right around here, we get the red card right at 62, and then we don't create another chance pretty much for the rest of the match. Um, the red card killed us. Gabriel got a yellow card for doing exactly what we were talking about, pushing up so high, exactly the reason for the goal. He did it again. Theo Walcott was in. He, I think, made an error in putting his arms up. Definitely was dumb. He was always going to get that yellow. He was obviously in the ref's mind. It was just a really stupid thing, and I feel bad for Gabriel because it was his first game, the whole game, and I was talking to you while we were watching it that I thought he was doing really poorly, and he's usually one of the best performers for the team. Um, and I mean, he's got a red card. We're gonna suffer for it because we don't have a better left-sided center back, or probably any sided center back, than Gabriel. And I said before he got the red card that he should sub him out, and I was semi joking, but we were both definitely aware that that was gonna happen. So
Yeah, no, it happened moments later, and definitely, just kind of adding insult to injury after the red card from the Burnley game.
yeah, and so obviously Southampton after that point took control. Arsenal I think did well to stay in it, but not good enough from Arsenal to get 1 point out of the last 5 games. Um, it's obviously there's a lot of tension over there. Arteta needs to be a little bit more ruthless and get be more productive, and he needs to get results. And there's a lot of changes that need to happen. We heard Dominic Sabazlai right from multiple sources now,
Yeah, RB
including
Leipzig
his own
player
Instagram.
official.
He's
RB
moved
Leipzig.
from one Red Bull to the other in I mean there's been other players who have done that, right? So it's kind of like a trend.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, and managers as well.
right, Haaland went to Dortmund, but same sort of premise. So let's see how
Mm-hmm.
he does. He's not going to Arsenal. Edu has come out saying that we need a creative player in the midfield. Cue to Ozil at home twitching fucking Fortnite. Um, so, I mean, it's a little comical for them to be coming out and saying that, and then to also be like Ozil isn't playing because he's not good enough, and it's like literally who does he need to be better than? You know what I mean? Like we don't have another playmaking 10. I don't think Ozil is the solution, but I mean, it looks pretty fucking dumb to leave out your most expensively paid player and then be hurting really bad in that position and like pretty much be like drowning because you can't do exactly what he does solely. So I mean, I'm just like, obviously it is what it is, and I'm not even saying it's fully Mikel Arteta's fault, but it's just a weird message from the club to give because it's just like such easy ammunition for everyone to be like,
Yeah, man, definitely. I mean, it's tough, but I think it's good to have Aubameyang get that goal, and that you guys will build off that in any way that you can. I mean, there's not that much further down you can go, I guess. So, and maybe in January, with the Sabasai move off now, maybe you can get someone else that's not Christian Eriksen. We talked about Buendia possibly. I don't know where anything's at, but keep your ears open because January is almost here, and the transfer window is
it's coming
opening.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think we should move next to the two teams from Manchester, where we had a 0-0 draw between United and City. Really kind of boring game. I think Pep, you know, he could have maybe gotten something from this one, but this week none of the big six have won from the weekend games. None of the big six had taken any points, and of all of the two games from this game week, the only team that won both games was Everton. Other teams, a couple teams got 4 points here and there, but Everton was the only one to do so with their 1-0 win against Chelsea and Leicester. But you know, Manchester Derby, not really a great game, kind of dull. Um, not a ton there. But then Manchester City on their response game against West Brom tied 1-1. So that's also another really upsetting result for Pep, where he needs wins, kind of like Arteta. Pep's not doing as poorly points wise with Manchester City, but he
I
definitely
mean,
needed a
it's tighter
result,
in
and
there.
especially against West Brom. Yeah, and you know they gotta move up the table.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's been dropping points this year, so it's not as much, like
Yeah, it's tight.
it's tight because last season, right? If anybody had dropped, what is it, 6 games now,
Be over for
it
them.
would be over. That they wouldn't have a chance. So it's a little bit different this year. I don't think City are out of it, and on the contrary, I think even though they did draw this game, right? And I'm gonna just again show kind of what I'm looking at here with Manchester City. They produced so many chances against this West
Yeah,
Brom
and this
team.
is the game that got Slaven Bilic fired, by the way, and I think we can see why from here,
and
maybe.
and I think, yeah, like, right, it's after you get a draw against Manchester City away for Slaven Bilic to get the bag is kind of like, I mean, I don't know what it does for the morale of the team. I think they're probably okay with it. A lot of those players are kind of Slaven players though. And he definitely hasn't been doing great, but I do kind of wonder, like maybe give him one more game
Yeah,
after the
they lost
Manchester
to
City
they
game.
lost to Newcastle the previous game 2-1, which was, I guess, an encouraging loss for them because they at least got on the board there, and they kind of played well in that game. But yeah, like you said, getting the draw against Manchester City away, you'd think, wow, they fired this guy maybe too early, but I don't think so. I think it might be a smart, a wise decision.
Yeah, I mean they literally had no chances, right? In Manchester City, it was an onslaught. I honestly can't believe it. You could see how close these big chances
Yeah,
are that
it's
they're
insane.
having. It's
Yeah.
like Arsenal. If this was a map for Arsenal, like this would be like every touch that we had in the box. You know what I mean? And Manchester City, it's like this is every like shot that they had, and it's like they have like 15 shots in the box. Why didn't they score more than one goal? They didn't have Aguero out there. Gabi Jesus has been really good when he first came back, and then has kind of immediately thereafter not been able to score. The whole team hasn't really been firing on all cylinders, but I do think that they're going to start grinding back up into gear. And I would say another interesting thing about this game, right, is only two substitutes by Pep Guardiola, who has come out recently saying that he doesn't know what his players think, but when he starts a team, it's for the tactical reasons, and it's not for rotation. So, like, if you're not playing, it's because you're not supposed to.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Well, he he started, Foden over Mahrez, and you'd think that with such a deep team that they could get it in, get a result in here, and having Aguero come on as well, you know, you'd think Pep could do better against this West Brom team, but no, and I think there's he just signed that new tier deal. I think they're right to be really patient with him in terms of their ownership, and the Sheik there being very very patient with Pep, and I think it's the right move. And I
Yeah, I
do
mean
think
I
they're
mean
at
he's
this
produced
moment.
already though,
Yeah,
so
and I
it's
think
not like
yeah,
they're being that
obviously,
patient. Like
obviously,
if you win a couple titles and then you
right,
have to
right, right.
wait, like
In terms of where they are now, though, and where they have been the last
yeah,
year, though, I think
they're not
yeah,
just stagnating, they're declining.
right.
So
But I think this might be a moment where City are starting to turn around, given
yeah,
given
I
what they're
agree.
looking
I
like and
think
having Aguero back.
definitely. I mean, when you look right at just kind of like the expected goals that they've been having and just like right against Manchester United, they didn't do great, but they definitely did better than United. West Brom, right? They
Hmm.
totally demolished Fulham. They demolished Burnley. They demolished Tottenham. Got 2 goals and are obviously that kind of team where they're just super ruthless, but they still created like a solid amount of chances, almost 2 expected goals. Same against Liverpool. Like they're not doing that badly in the beginning, right? For them to beat us 1-0 and create less than they created against Tottenham, against Manchester United, like that was bad. When they didn't create even 1 expected goal against West Ham to get that draw, that was bad. But like, I don't think that what's going on right now is indicative of them continuing a poor form. I think they're probably going to start to get it in gear now. And this is sort of
Yeah,
the
and
when the games come thick and fast. So this is when you want that to be the
right.
case.
Yeah, and just to note, they do have the lowest expected goals against in the Premier League as well. So
Do they? They have less than
yeah.
Tottenham now.
Hmm.
Who has the best numerical defense in the league right now? Do you know? Should we take a look?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Because I would assume that
So
it would have
Spurs have
been
conceded
City or
12, and
Tottenham.
City and Spurs have both conceded 12. Aston Villa, wow, have only conceded 13. That's pretty good.
I knew early on in the beginning of the season they were sort of the best defense. Arsenal were the best defense for a while, which looking back on it is pretty funny.
Well, yes, we
Um,
also saw John Stones rotate in as well a little bit. He didn't start during the
I thought that
week.
was interesting.
Yeah, because we had talked about how he was kind of getting snubbed, and with the new center
There
back
were
coming
rumors of
in.
him coming to Arsenal at one point, which I was wary of. But then again, you watch him play, and you're kind of like, is he worse than Rob Holding? Like, no. So
Yeah,
it's hard because players get labels and stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who was starting for Everton as a teenager, and then starting for Manchester City in seasons where they won the league and blew teams out and were
yeah,
very good. So obviously not a bad player. Maybe not progressing as much as people would have hoped, and England put so much pressure on these players too. Um, but I'm sure that he can move. I mean, he can move back to Everton and do a really great job there if they didn't have so many young English center backs and defenders already. It'd probably be a good move for him.
yeah, definitely. Well, I kind of want to talk about Everton
Me
if you
too. They
don't
had a
mind. Yeah,
couple of
moving on.
very
Yeah,
interesting games there too. One against
yeah,
Chelsea, right, and one.
yeah. 1-0 win versus Chelsea, and then a 2-0 win versus Leicester. And again, they're the only team to get 6 points from this double game week feature here. So that was a really big win. And also,
A turn of
without
right.
James Rodriguez, Alex Iwobi coming in, Richarlison playing really, really well right now, and you know they're able to do it without James Rodriguez and Gylfi Sigurdsson as well coming in and having a really good couple of games.
Yeah, I mean, right. They were in a pretty bad form there for a while, right? Only they lost 4 games in 5 before the Burnley game, um, which was kind of like a turning point for that Burnley team. So even that draw to Burnley that they got was against a Burnley who was like in 19th and was only ahead of Sheffield United, who had 1 point. So, I mean, they were not doing well. And then they kind of came to this Chelsea team and really frustrated them and did a really good job. Chelsea have had some issues breaking down teams as well. Chelsea, interestingly enough, actually haven't beaten a team in the top 10 yet.
Yeah, Chelsea are not doing so hot right now. We can talk about them too.
I mean, the two teams played each other, so definitely in that Everton Chelsea game, the dynamic that was playing out was like almost stronger than the um the force was for Everton to be bad and not perform, and they did not perform. They had like very low expected goals. They didn't have a lot of shots. They weren't by any means wowing anybody in that game. Um, but they were very solid, and I think Ancelotti drills that into their team. Right, they have a really good midfield. They have a strong back line with pacey players who can really defend and go both ways, and you can't creep up too high or go back too low. And I think Lampard was very cautious and gave a lot of respect to Ancelotti. Was Ancelotti at one point Lampard's manager? I think he
Maybe,
must have he
yeah,
must have
maybe.
been, right? Um, but basically, I think he just showed him too much respect. Chelsea aren't have not been able to break down these really strong teams in the top 10. They play too defensively, I think, in those games. Lampard, obviously, I think, has been shaken mostly by those United games where he's gotten slapped around, right? He's had a couple of games against big teams where he's had some pretty big defeats, where he's been playing really open. And so he switched right from earlier on in the season. He was using a 4-2-3-1, playing Kai Havertz right there in that hole, which I think is where everyone would play him. And now he's playing more with this 4-3-3 where he's using Kai Havertz as, one of the 6-8 hybrids. And he's not really working out as well. They've lost Ziyech, which is a lot of creativity for them.
Yeah, they're
Pulisic.
really missing Ziyech, and I don't think they paid the fee that they paid for Havertz to have him pass the ball to Reece James on every single play. It was like we were watching it. It was
It's
just
very
like
safe.
what we were both like watch him pass the ball to Reece right now every time, and it's so safe. And honestly, like that's what I would do if I was playing out there because Reece James is so freaking amazing. But if you're Kai Havertz, like you're expected of more, and I think honestly that he hasn't really played in the right position yet. I think he's much better right behind a striker where he can get in and be around for crosses and set up kind of flicks and stuff like that because that's what he was doing at Leverkusen. He had a ton of headers. He's a huge dude, but he's also technical, so you want him in the box, in and around the box. So I don't know. I think he's going maybe like Frank doesn't really have like quite an identity yet for him, and I think if you're a new signing, you want to know what you are, and he's not really getting that yet either. So it's tough.
Yeah, and we're gonna I'm gonna just share this really quick. This is all of Kai Havertz's passes in that game against Everton. And you can see exactly what we're talking about, right? All of his passes are
Just right
literally
there.
right here outside of the box. I guarantee you 80% of those passes are to Reece James. Reece James, if we take a look, his passes are also right. They're all, and that makes sense because where he is. But if we look kind of at some of like the counterparts, right? If we look at Iwobi, he's just getting a little bit more into the actual box. And
Mhm.
obviously Everton didn't play that well, but he's trying to get into the box. We look at Richarlison and you see he's actually like able to penetrate the box. But the thing that's different about Iwobi and Richarlison as well is that they actually dribble the ball, right? And so when we look at the dribbles and we look at Havertz's dribbles, right? He has a couple, but I don't think that's a really big facet of his game is he has those quick feet and he doesn't really use flair, but he is able to get by people, right?
Mhm.
And he's shown that. And this is where he could be dangerous is when he's dribbling in and around these areas, right? And we look at Richarlison and probably more attempts at dribbling, but he's not even really getting into the same areas. Um, Iwobi also, not really attempting, not really the same efficacy either. So you see that, Kai Havertz is able to get deep dribbles. If you're dribbling somebody right here on the edge of the box, you're going to create a chance, definitely. And so I think he just needs to be a little bit more adventurous. He obviously has the ability and the tools. He has like every freaking tool that you could want. And that's why people thought he was going to be such a revelation. It's a tough league, right? We saw in Dombele how he's performing now, how he performed last season. A lot of players grow into it. But at the price tag and at, you know, just all of the pressure that's been mounted on Chelsea with how much they've spent overall, not just on Kai, but on the whole team. He's probably not going to be given that long of a grace period here before fans of other teams, and I mean they have, but I mean before really it gets into the public
Yeah,
energy that he's a total flop, right?
I kind of pay special attention to him each game because I'm so interested in how Frank
I
plays
mean
him in
it's
that game, and
impossible not to, right?
yeah, and
The
it's
commentators talk about it the whole time.
so how could you not just feel like, wow, this is maybe it's not
It's
so
like
good
it's like
because
the
you see,
Pogba deal, right?
yeah, yeah, and you see Timo, he was able to come in and immediately influence. Now he's kind of dropping. I do want to give Kurt Zuma a shout because he's been one of their most consistent players in terms of creating or getting headers in the box. He's been absolutely phenomenal. One of the I think we can dub him a set piece wizard as we do with the likes of Suchek. I think he's in there because Zuma has every game he's been able to get one against Wolves. He hit one against the crossbar from a corner against a Wolves team that's can defend set piece as well. So, but other than that, definitely disappointing from Havertz and more recently Timo Werner as well. I think he needs to step it up because he's not been performing as well with these results.
Yeah, I mean, and the problems also lie with Giroud, I think, right? People
Yeah,
love Giroud, and I obviously am very upset about it, admittedly, because he's the exact same player that he was at Arsenal. He's not all of a sudden this magic player because he scored 4 goals against Sevilla. He does a lot of things really well. He's really good at holding up possession. He's really good at, front post runs. He's got a big, meaty French forehead. He is not good at breaking teams down, running in behind, doing a lot of things. And I think he's also not good at being prolific, right? He scored, I think, in his most prolific season for Arsenal, 17 goals. He's gone long periods of time where he won't score at all. And so for him to be the starting striker for this Chelsea team right now, I think if they have title aspirations is untenable because he just doesn't. Werner, I thought was going to come in. He was tried at striker for a while. They obviously aren't too happy with Tammy Abraham. But it's kind of like if Timo Werner isn't going to be the striker, and I think he should be. I mean, I
I don't
think
know
he's such
why
a
I would.
quality player. It
Yeah,
makes no sense because I know he hasn't been finishing all of his chances recently, but he's obviously going. Like with Giroud, he misses all of his chances, but that's always been the case for his whole career. Whereas Timo Werner has a track record of being clinical, and he's like getting so close. You know what I
he's
mean? It's
so
not like
fast
Giroud
too.
where he just fucking blows it.
You can play a completely different game with Timo in the front.
And so you see with Giroud, right, that he's just not going to be getting them enough goals. And when they're trying to break teams down and get beyond like a team like Wolves, like you have to get goals in because they're going to punish you at some point, and they're hard to break down. And if the strategy is let me throw in Giroud from the fucking start and just rip crosses at his head from a simple back pass from Kai Havertz to Reece James, like it's just not.
Yeah, it's not
Sure,
it's
they,
not
he
it.
he
Yeah,
did get a goal, off
yeah.
of
Giroud did
off of
get
a
a goal.
corner
Yeah,
kick. But like if Chelsea is planning on winning games through corner kicks, like they're fucked. So
yeah, and it's not sustainable. But I think next we can move on to the team in third place right now, which is Southampton. I know we're both excited about this team. We really like the coach, Ralph Hasenhüttl. He's really done some magic. He's turned this team around since he was at the helm last season. As you may remember, they lost 9-0 to Leicester. And since then, he went on a string of losses, and now he's back. And they had faith in him, and rightfully so, because Hassan Huddle is really showing that he can do it even after selling their talisman Pierre-Emile Højbjerg to Spurs. So I think it's crazy that Southampton are in this position right now. They're able to show consistency. We talked about the Theo Walcott goal against Arsenal, which was a great finish, but they also had the 3-0 win versus Sheffield United, which saw Danny Ings come back. Now that Danny Ings is back, given that they were taking results against opposition without their best player Danny Ings, they were still able to get something with Walcott coming in. I think it's a really special performance from Southampton. I'm honestly not sure how long it can last, but it's working out. There's rumors that maybe they'll try to sign Brandon Williams in January on loan, possibly from Manchester United. Not sure about that, but that would be exciting.
It would be
Uh,
interesting because he can play on both sides.
yeah, and kind of fit into that young team with the exciting Southampton academy always producing pretty good
I
players.
guarantee you he gets a red card. He is a real twat.
So we'll see about that, but we're not fully sure about that. But regardless,
Yeah, I
Hassan
think
Ho has
I
done a
think he
great
could
job.
add a lot to that team though, because
Yeah,
he's a super tenacious player. So I think Ralph is gonna love him. He's just a player who just like hits the hell out of people and is super aggressive and hard in challenges. And he's kind of like a player that fans are gonna like because he just fights really hard.
yeah, and
So I
also Bednarek and Vestergaard have both been that kind of player for them as well. Just those kind of animal players where they're also really really dangerous on corners from James Ward-Prowse, who is just
and
the
Vestergaard has
best
been just
free
really
kick
strong
taker.
overall. I would say, you know
Yeah.
what I mean. He's
Hmm.
just been a really good leader for that team. Um, which and I mean, it's a team that does not have a lot of star power. It doesn't have kind of like when you look at the team sheet with a lot of teams, you kind of are like, okay, this is with those players, they should probably play kind of this style. And with Southampton, you're kind of like, I don't know what kind of style Che Adams should be playing. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's kind of like shithouse ball. But then you also look at like Oriol Romeu, and he kind of does that, but in like a Spanish way, where he's like a little bit more elegant. And then you have
He's got
like
great technique, Romeo. We've seen that from his fantastic goals this season
yeah,
with
he
the
does have
team.
really good technique. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. He's more of like a
Hmm.
Xavi, but like he's kind of shithousey. But then they
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
play shithouse at all, right? They
Yeah.
try to play like super aggressive. They play, but not in like a foul way, but in like a press. They play super high line. They have that really nice structure with the twos, the 4-2-2-2. But I mean, he's just doing so well, and you wonder why Dortmund wouldn't kind of chase after him. I
Yeah.
thought that that might be on the cards. They're obviously going for Marco Rosa, um, with Favre leaving, but
Mönchengladbach.
yeah. But I do think that Southampton have just been really good. They have done this before in the past, where they've been really good. They've never, in the past couple of seasons, they've never been able to stay in form for longer than half a season. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's like they always are either at the back end or the front end of a season doing like really well, and then they go through a period of just being awful.
Right,
I
but I think with the run that they've gone on, regardless of if they tank, they're now at the point where they're just there where they can have enough points to kind of guarantee safety given
But like
the
at that
bottom
point, do they
three.
start getting late? You know what I mean? I think that might
Yeah,
be part of
yeah.
the issue. Is like they
Hmm.
know, like, do they even want to be in the Champions League? Like
Hmm.
Theo Walcott's basically retired. He celebrated so hard when he scored against Arsenal. I thought that was like he was there for 10 years, and I don't even care. Like I think that's dumb, but like I was kind of like, all right, Theo, you know
Yeah,
he's a
disrespectful.
new man now. He's letting his hair down, as they
Burn all the
say.
bridges.
But yeah, I mean Southampton are interesting, but also interesting on the flip side of that is the Sheffield United team, which are it's they're going on a Chris Wilder ride
Yeah.
to a 0 point season, but it's they're tough because like even more so than Southampton, I would say they have very little quality in the team. Chris Wilder is a Sheffield United supporter, like that's his club. He bleeds for the team. He's brought them up so high. He did so well last season.
He is the
If
club.
if Leicester can fire Ranieri, I think that they could probably fire this dude. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But
1 point.
he has
Uh,
1 point. How many
I
games can you keep that for? Obviously, they lost 3-0 to this very informed Southampton team. Nothing to be ashamed of. But then they also lost 3-2 to this shitty Manchester United team. So I think, at what time do you say enough is enough?
yeah, I
They,
don't know,
they
and
almost crawled. They almost crawled it back though for this
it's
Manchester
true. It's
United game,
true to their
which I
credit.
think we
And
could touch on because look, and we're gonna
one
do.
quick thing though about Wilder is that I heard an interview with the chairman of Sheffield United, with BBC, and he said he is sticking with Chris Wilder, and no
I
matter
mean,
what, they're
they
not going to
they
fire him.
they literally they love him.
Yeah, so we'll see if they can get more than 1 point, maybe win a game eventually.
Yeah, so I'm gonna show a couple of stills here. Let's see how this goes.
Still,
Let's see how it goes. So basically, this is the first goal, right? So Sheffield United did a good job. Dean Henderson obviously taking the place of De Gea in the starting lineup recently, as the goalie for United, and he got a pass back and then just kind of waited too long. And Sheffield did a good job of pressing. McGoldrick put the ball in the net. They won it right off of his foot. He's paused too long. He should have done a cutback. But after that, Man United really kind of went on the offensive, and I just want to show you here. Basically, the ball comes out to Wan Bissaka. Everybody's coming across. I'm not going to show this much. I'm going to go back here. So basically, once we get this ball here, the shape, is okay. We have nobody pressing here, but we have a crazy high line, which doesn't make sense. If you're going to be implementing a high line, you
it's
can't
like a
let
sandwich. It's like a sandwich
you
defense
can't
off the
like
ball.
this kills me all the time. Like if you have a high
How
line or if you're
tight.
trying if you're trying to do a press, like these are all professional players. They're fucking good. So if you give even Lindelof, right, a lot of time on the ball and then you're also playing a super high line so you have all this space in behind, like he's going to look how easy this pass is. You've got this line is obviously not in a row, but like he doesn't even need to be like, you know what I mean? Even if this defender was in line, he wouldn't need to be behind this line of these that these other players are making for the offside to get him behind. He's faster than all of them. Like, look how much space that one vertical pass has put Marcus Rashford into, and he gets the ball in behind all of them. I mean, it's that pass had been made like 2 or 3 times, and it was just so obvious. And um, tell me if you're still with me. Can you see the one
Yeah,
one the 2-1
yeah.
goal?
Hmm.
Okay, so basically the exact same thing happens for the second goal, right? You see Bruno Fernandez coming, and you see they have five across the back, right?
Six almost, honestly.
Bruno comes in, and this line is just like so dead. I just like
But why is the
there's so much
center back going
space
up every
here.
time? And also, we saw at one point Basham was ahead of McGoldrick at one point. So it's like this dude is he's not really sure where to go.
It's just like neither of them are picking up the runner here, and it's just like if you're a Sheffield United team who are 1 point in the league, right? And you're telling Manchester United, I'm not going to track you at all. like, like he runs across two dude. This guy is, I don't know what he thinks he's doing here. You're right. He should have stepped up. But what does this guy think he's doing? What is this guy is not doing anything?
Yeah, absolutely.
The line isn't straight. As soon as the ball went out to right here, they're all like they're running back, but they never try to turn on, right? Like they never are even trying. This guy's pointing to look at this guy. He has no idea that Martial is behind him. So when he gets
Yeah.
in, it's not surprising. But anyway, I don't think it's hard to say with managers. I feel like we are in a time period where there's no patience, and I do think with 9 times out of 10, um, form, a lot of these things like firing the manager isn't just going to fix it. Like I don't know that Sheffield United are gonna get Pep Guardiola Jr. to come in there and they're gonna play the most beautiful game, or like if Sam Allardyce comes in there and basically they just waste this season in trying to stay up and like maybe don't, you know what I mean? Or like
Well, Big Sam we know is going to go to West Brom. He's going to
yeah,
manage
yeah.
Sunday at West Brom.
And I mean, they're not getting Pep Guardiola Jr. either. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
hypothetically, I don't know who they think they're going to get in that's better than Chris Wilder. So I guess that's why they're not firing him. But I'm saying, I don't know if that's terrible. But at the same time, when you have 1 point this far into the league, there's no way these players don't question the manager, question each other, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes just bringing something new in is just going to change the vibe.
but
That can be
also
a
at the
player.
same time,
That could be a player change, but when it's usually not the transfer window. So if they can make it 2 weeks, right, sign some new players and kind of breathe some new life in, maybe that'll help. But they're going to be playing a lot of games in the next 2 weeks. So I mean, if they're
yeah,
3, 4 wins in the future, uh, I don't see how he could keep his job.
yeah. But also do they fire him and potentially lose their ticket back? If they get rid of him.
Yeah, that's the other thing. But do you think he would? Maybe he
Yeah,
leaves.
I don't know.
That
Well,
would
he
be kind of
is
fun.
the club. He is
That's
the
like what
club.
happens, right? But I guess he is.
Yeah. But
He's a
anyway,
diehard fan.
I think just to get off of Sheffield for a second, I just want to get to Leicester really quickly because they are in fourth place right now. With They had the 3-0 win over Brighton after their late winner against Sheffield, which we remember Vardy smashing the corner flag is embedded into my brain now forever. But yeah, Leicester had the 3-0 win against Brighton. And then they had that 2-0 loss against Everton, which we covered as well, and that leaves them in fourth place right now.
Yeah, and they've been really good, right? They're playing Tottenham next, so that's
Yep.
something I think that'll be a really good game because Brendan Rodgers is a little bit more flexible tactically than Jose Mourinho. I think they play similarly on the break, and so it'll be an interesting game, probably a low scoring game. But I think both Jose and Brendan Rodgers do this thing where they try to like take the other team out of their game, right? Jose against Man City was like, I'm literally going to spend the whole game sending my midfielders to play as like auxiliary fullbacks to guard against that overlapping run that you do every time just to like totally
Mm-hmm.
stunt the play. And I think Brendan Rodgers does that stuff too. The biggest example, I don't know why this is coming to my head, is when he was back at Liverpool and he played Suarez as like a left winger against Arsenal one game for like the work rate. You know what I mean? He also will pull some kind of tactical move where he'll just basically man mark somebody out of the game and just change the element and take people out of their stride and go, okay, maybe this isn't going to be exactly what I want to do, but it's definitely not what you want to do. So I'd be interested in just the tactical battle between them. But I think Leicester have been getting a little bit lucky recently. They've had a couple of late minute winners. They've
Mm-hmm.
had some games where, like against Sheffield, they had that super late winner, and I think that with a player like Vardy who finishes just everything and is so clinical, maybe the best finisher in the league just in terms of like composure. It's definitely like him and Son right now. Um, you can kind
Maybe
of get
Calvert
you
Lewin.
could get away with that a little bit, but I do think it's going to catch up with them because they don't have the depth and the creativity all the way through the team. And Vardy doesn't have a son. James
Well,
Madison
maybe
obviously
with
coming
Cengiz
back and,
coming
and
in
doing
as
really
well.
well. Chengiz,
Yeah.
I don't see Chengiz being a 15 goal a game season, but I
Yeah.
will say his expected non-penalty goals and assists per 90 is the best on the Leicester team. He's only played 200 minutes, so take it with a grain of salt. But when he's been on, and I think everybody's seen this, he's so good at finding Jamie Vardy. He's got a wand of a left foot. He's kind of like a Messi-esque player. Um, but that
Yeah.
just means, but just in the terms that he's very technical and he cuts in from the left wing and he just is less of like a super flair, like I'm gonna beat you with pace all the time winger, and more of like I'm gonna hit a super curvy pass type of guy,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah. And
like a rocket from deep. And I think he's really good. So you know,
Yeah, he can
they
come
seem
in.
to get the best out of the team. And Brendan Rodgers is super patient with people, right? So he's had Ayozi come in, he's had Dennis Prayat come in, he's had Yori Kielemont come in. And at first and through different patches, they haven't always been amazing, but he gives them so much game time usually, and they're usually players that have growth that I think we'll see something similar from Chengiz.
Yeah, definitely, and also another exciting player that we've talked a lot about is Fofana, and he's been really good. The 19-year-old defender, I've been really impressed with him. He's you know come in and kind of outperformed their one of their best players last season, which is Soyun Chu, who's been out a bit and not really made the same mark as he has last season due to that. So uh, definitely looking at Fofana a lot because he's heavily involved in the game and a very influential player,
Yeah.
exciting as a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and definitely, I always think about William Saliba and how William Saliba was the head of him, right, in that Saint Etienne
Right.
side, which I think he's hyper aware of because on the other side, on Instagram, when Guendouzi scored a goal for Hertha Berlin over the weekend, he commented like, great goal or like, whatever, and then Pepe commented, "This is why you get in trouble because you're always talking too much." And then Saliba replied, I'm just supporting my fellow brother who's been locked up. Obviously, referencing how he's been frozen out of the team, hasn't been given the chances. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You know what I mean? These are 19-year-old millionaires that we're talking about. So he just wants to play. I think he's just trying. It might have been like his agent even who told him, like say something like this so so you can still try to force your move or so that they have to, respond to you or whatever. But I don't think it's great advice to be doing that. It was obviously kind of dumb. He's had a lot go on for him. He just wants to play. I'm not going to count too much against him. But I do think that, it's kind of interesting to see Fofana has been so quality for Leicester. They have so many good young players. Um, and it seems like almost every player that they do bring in, they lose players. They lost Maguire. Um, they lost Ben Chilwell. They brought in Fofana, another young defender, and he's just immediately taken off. They have a super interesting record, right, with the 8 wins, but the 5 losses, very polarizing. Jamie Vardy with 14 goal involvements, by far and away the most on the team. The next highest being 4 for Harvey Barnes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a super interesting team that works well, but I don't think again, they don't have the depth. They're so specific to the players they have that if Jamie Vardy misses 2 games or has a suspension or a little injury or whatever, I think it's really going to throw them
Yeah,
off
there's
completely.
no replacement for him.
They don't
Um,
have one.
but yeah, other than Leicester, I
Unless they
think
play Arsenal and he can come in, just for like the
of
last
course.
10 minutes.
But I think other than Leicester, we got to talk about the most thrilling game that we had was the 7 goal thriller.
Oh, the Leeds
Leeds
game, we
putting up,
finally got one.
yeah, Leeds finally got one, and they put up
They've been
5
waiting.
goals, and they
They played
have,
really well. They played really well. And I mean,
yeah.
it was all unlocked by Pablo Hernandez, right? So,
It was he was subbed on and he got 2 assists, and I think he's maybe one of the oldest players. I don't have the stat, but one of the oldest players to do that in the Premier League, especially recently coming on. And he's gotten virtually no time so far this season. He had some in the beginning, but a super influential player for Leeds promotion. He's come back in and he's made his mark here.
yeah,
Um,
hasn't really had the opportunity, right, in the Prem. He was a huge star for them 2 seasons ago when they just missed out on promotion. A big star for them last season as well, but didn't have as stellar of a season as he did 2 seasons ago. But I mean, when you look just at the chart here, right, it's like something just went off. And Leeds, they were doing really, really well throughout the whole game as they always do. They're, in top of the league in creation and all those statistics always every game. But they're so bad at finishing usually. But in this game, right after Newcastle tied it up at the 2-2, they just totally right. They subbed in um, Pablo Hernandez and they just really took off with those 3 goals. And I think that it was good that all the it was five different goal scorers, which I think is a little bit rare when you have a 5 goal game to have, each of them be different. I think that's is just kind of what leads are all about, right? It's a bunch of self-made men out there doing the hard work. They had a really good press, they had really good intensity. This Newcastle team was not able to capitalize on, some of the loose passing and some of the balls they had in the area. They were only really able to carve out two serious chances, and those were the two that they put away. Um, Jeff Hendrick and Kieran Clark did well to put them away, though. So
Yeah, yeah. Hendrick's goal coming first was a pretty good one for him. But yeah, it's really great to see Leeds get so many of their players on the score sheet, and also if you've seen that Amazon documentary about Leeds, Alioski is one of their players that Bielsa likes a lot, and he's
and I
kind of
think
come
he
through the team, and he's got passion and fire in him, and he upsets other players in ways that can kind of get under other players' skin. So he adds that element
like
to it as
Pepe, yeah.
well. Yeah, and it's effective sometimes,
I
and
mean, that's yeah, you do need that. It's a player that everybody on your team is gonna like, and he's a fighter, and that's Bielsa has just instilled them in that so hard. And I remember um, when they scored the fourth goal, Bielsa is panned to on the bench, and he's just so angry. Like he's so mad, and
it's
they're
a
like,
nice goal.
they're obviously gonna win. I think it was actually the fifth goal.
Mm.
They're obviously gonna win at this point,
And you
and
can tell he's analyzing everything, and he's just not. There's something he's totally pissed about, and he's not having it, even though they're
yeah,
up.
he just doesn't even like. He's just so
Like the game's in the
very
bag, dude.
yeah. And I just like I love just how intense he is. I mean, they talk about how like his brother is a politician and his other brother is like, you know, or his sister is also in politics, and then he's
Mm.
got some other sibling who does something else like in finance or something very serious at a very high level. Um, and it's like Bielsa also brings that energy too. It's like he is, constantly, and I think Sorry had a little bit of that vibe too. It's like you can tell that like all of the stress of the job is like his whole life, and he's always just fully focused on soccer and Leeds and building something and every particular game and every pass somebody's going to make. So it's nice, I think, um, especially when you do see some of the other managers like a Sean Dyche or people who you're a little
The
bit
more
incredulous
practical.
of just like what actual like obviously these guys are played professionally for years and have so much knowledge, they've gotten the license and stuff, but then when you hear some of the shit that they say, you're kind of like it doesn't seem like you're getting a deeper understanding of what's going on than like me as just someone who is enthusiastic and a fan of the game has. Whereas like when Bielsa brings out the PowerPoint and is like, here's every formation that exists in the game, I'm like, okay, well, like
And this
I'm
is
listening.
why.
Like what do you have to say? Like it just makes more sense than when Sean Dyche just like puts his head in the sand and is like, we should have
Yeah,
gotten a red card.
and if you think it's all bullshit too, and you should be more practical, like a Sean Dice or a Wilder, just watch the Leeds games. It's like they're so fucking entertaining. Everything is like every
And he doesn't
moment you
have a
can't
super
stop looking
strong
away.
team, so
Yeah, and like we said, it's all self-made
and he
men.
and he
Obviously, he's
has been
got a
giving up
cup.
the goals.
Yeah, they have been shipping and
Sure, but he's also winning games, right? That's
right,
that's that's the payoff is instead of having, 10 draws, he's got a
right,
bunch of wins.
right,
And
and
he
he's
has
not
some
sitting with
losses,
one
but
point. Yeah,
so he's not playing when he goes out for a game, it doesn't matter who he's lining up for, he's always looking to win the game. And
yeah. Second
so
highest shots on target per 90 Leeds United with 5.54, just
I mean
behind
they
Liverpool's
already have 17
and
points.
above City. So
That's not bad. 5
it's not bad,
wins.
yeah,
Arsenal
for a
would kill
newly
for a fifth
promoted.
win. They're playing similarly to Arsenal, who are obviously in the worst form, but they're doing better than us. And I think they spent a lot less money probably. So
Yeah,
I think we've covered pretty much
yeah,
everything. We do have some games coming up. We don't have to go over them too much. I think the big ones we want to touch on, right, are going to be Southampton, Manchester
Yeah,
City.
so excited for that one.
Super excited. These are two teams that play super offensively. It should be a high scoring game with a lot of chances and a lot of really nice interplay. So excited for that one. Everton, Arsenal. This is, two teams. I think Everton, Ancelotti, I think because he's a little bit more old school, might give Arsenal more respect than they deserve. So I want to see how that one goes out. Xhaka obviously still out. Arsenal just scored their first goal. Everton coming off the back of 2 wins. Arsenal coming off the back of a bunch of red cards. So we'll see how that one plays out. And then, I mean, do you want to intro the two games on Sunday you think we might
Yeah,
be interested in here?
Spurs Leicester obviously going to be a big one. Huge statement game for Mourinho. I think we're going to look to win this game and go out with a force. But obviously Vardy loves to ruin everybody's day. And then
He's the most prolific scorer against the top six, I think.
yeah, yeah,
That's
and,
that's in the league right now, at
yep,
least. So I mean, you always have to fear him, but then at the same time, Tottenham are very good against strong teams. Let's see how that one shakes out. That'll be good.
yeah. And see maybe if Mourinho goes with
Might be it has
Ndombele and
0-0 written on it for me,
yeah, well,
or
we'll
like
see.
1-0.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think one game that might be interesting, maybe if you're betting, would be the West Brom Aston Villa game. Just given the statistics of new managers coming in, this is going to be um, Big Sam's back, so he's now coached all. I think all three. Um, yeah, so he's coached Brom, now West Ham. I mean, he's coached so many teams in the Premier League, so he's back
You
and
can't
he's
keep
back
track
in
of him. You
action.
can't
Yeah,
keep
it's
tabs on him.
but he's back and we love to
And
see
we
it. So
miss
I
him. I
think
can't wait for
maybe
the Jose interactions with him because
yeah,
Jose's in a good mood now, and I feel like when he's in a good mood, he starts saying some, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
when he's upset, the stuff he says is like maybe controversial, but it's not like fun. It's not, you know what I mean? It's usually
hmm
like he'd say something about Sam, and you'd be like, you just sound kind of petty. But now he's like
yeah,
happy. He's gonna say something about Sam, and it's gonna be like kind of weird. He's gonna be
hmm
like, I don't know. He says a lot of weird
who
stuff.
knows?
He loves Sam. He's
Who
always
knows?
talking about Sam. So
But they're
excited
going
for
up
that.
against Villa, so
I think
Jack
another good
Grealish,
one, right, is
United leads, yeah.
yeah, United leads. So there's a couple.
Yeah, and
There's a
Chelsea
couple
West
going on.
Ham too, because West Ham has been, really good.
And Chelsea has
Chelsea's kind
struggled
of
to
on the
keep it
dip as
going.
we
So
talked
we have a
about, yeah.
couple of matchups like any week, right? Anybody could
Yep.
win. But it's definitely been crazy this past week. A lot of results, a lot of tears for Arsenal fans, a lot of red cards. Um, and
And we go again on the weekend, so
yeah, and you live to be disappointed another day. So we'll see you next week. It's been great coming at you live. Pretty fun, right? Um,
double shot of tea, double game week. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. We're gonna put this out on YouTube,
we're gonna put a fat watermark on this so
Twitch.
nobody can steal our content.
Yeah,
And
that's
we're
it,
about
man.
to blow up, guys. So keep
Stay
your finger
tuned.
on the pulse.
Stay tuned. Double
About to
shot.
pour another cup. All right. See ya.